Ask for help, seek a mentor. And the other thing is don't think that your education stops.
Hello again. This is Catherine with the Sourcing Hero podcast. I've got a wonderful guest today. You guys are going to love him. His name is Frank Corris. He's been in procurement for 27 years, and he is the owner and CEO of Corris Consulting. Hi, Frank. Welcome.
Hello, how is everyone?
We're great now that you're here.
Well, thank you so much.
It's good to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited.
Well, we're excited to get some of your wisdom on our podcast and get a closer look into the life of Frank Corris. We originally met in Dallas at an industry function. We had some conversation about group purchasing because that's kind of a specialty we both know about, and we dug a little bit deeper into procurement. And I remember asking you how you felt about the sourcing hero and empowering procurement as a brand message. And do you remember what you said?
Of course not.
Well, you said you loved it.
Well, of course, yeah, I do. I personally am a little bit uncomfortable with the nomenclature of hero. I didn't rush into a burning building. I didn't say to get a kitten out of a tree. Uh, I did help a staff member who was choking in a staff meeting one time, uh, and gave
That
him
counts.
the Heimlich maneuver. So if that equates to hero, I'm fine with that. But does it relate to sourcing? I don't know. Like I said, I'm a little uncomfortable with it, but I understand. I understand the label.
I love that you're so modest. And I think that that's a common trait in procurement, that maybe you don't understand the larger impact that your role actually has. And so that's why we're here is to talk about that and empowering procurement and helping them understand that, in their own way within their organizations, they really are heroes. And more times than not, they do save the day. And I know that you and I have talked about some really big moments in your career, some small moments, but you've gone through a lot throughout the years and you've learned some tough lessons. Do you want to share with us one of those big moments?
Well, I think there's a general lesson that I have been working on and still do to this very day. Kind of just going back to the hero thing, I actually looked up that definition last evening. And one of the things it said was about noble, being noble traits. And some of those noble traits were honesty, integrity, generosity. And I think that's what I am comfortable with. I am comfortable with those kind of things. And
Is that more or less what, a sourcing hero, quote unquote, would mean to use to have those traits?
yes, yeah, I think that's kind of paramount that it is. So the lesson, the hard lesson I learned, and I have to admit I've had to learn this several times, is not responding emotionally. I come from an Italian family. We use our hands, we use our food, we're passionate. Everybody gets a hug when you come in the door. My mom would say, "Can I get you a cup of coffee?" And you go, "Oh, no, thanks," but you're going to get one anyway, and then some cookies and stuff. So which I know is near and dear to your heart too.
That's true.
Uh, but the lesson I've had to learn is to not respond emotionally or with a great deal of passion. To kind of slow down that a little bit, and you don't always have to show what your position is immediately. Give yourself some time, choose your words carefully, and if you can, and you should if you're a procurement professional or AKA hero, you should let data speak for itself. Now, I must say that you have to make sure that the data collection, the analytics are done right, and then let them speak for themselves. You don't have to say everything that you're thinking. And I struggle with that to this very day. I have to take a little.
You and me both. My manager would confirm that.
Everyone who knows me would confirm that. So yeah, it's a little bit of a struggle for me to not say what I'm thinking. But I think that is an important lesson to take a deep breath, give yourself a little bit of time, and respond accordingly. And you don't always have to show your position. I'm the guy that always takes a stance. I speak for those who are unspoken, and that's caused a few problems over the years. So just slow it down, take it easy.
Do you think that skill set helps you in negotiations?
Yeah, I think there's some inherent skills that one has to have. And if you really go back historically, back to the days of purchasing, there never was a degree in purchasing. No one ever offered a degree in purchasing. So people who got into this either came up through the ranks or probably had a degree in finance or accounting or were good with numbers. Uh, that's not all it takes anymore. I don't even use the word procurement. Yeah, I mean, I mentor some college students who are in supply chain. I go, if you see a position posted as a procurement agent, move on. It doesn't exist. If it does exist, it's old school. You're not going to be happy.
So
And
what should they be looking for?
well, I think more of a strategic procurement, strategic sourcing, supply chain. Those are the kind of positions that they should be looking for because that procurement thing is just old school. You see that a lot in universities, and I have worked for two universities, including the Ohio State University. Uh, and it was old school, and they still were doing purchasing activities. Those titles like purchasing agents still existed. But people expect more now. It's not about the transaction. I have never had a very large save, and more so a sustainable save, where I didn't change the process. That could be integration of technology, could be mapping out current workflow, looking for redundancies, multiple touch points, things of that nature. So, there's so much more to it. A common measurement in any place I ever worked is how much money are you going to save me?
Right.
And it should really be how am I making your business more efficient?
It's not just about the savings, there's so much more. And I totally get that. I think that what you're saying and this message that we're going to be amplifying is so needed in procurement, kind of reinventing the perception of sourcing professionals. It's not just about savings. Savings is great, right? But there's so much more to it. And you just perfectly described why.
Well, I think there's another common thread that I see is that executives, high ranking executives, expect continuous improvement, but don't provide continuous training. So that's an unreasonable expectation. It's something I see all the time. When budgets get tight, just like they are right now, the first thing that gets cut is the training budget. So, how do you expect someone to either broaden their skills or grow upwards without any kind of reinforcement? I am a lifelong learner. I didn't get an undergraduate degree until I was 45 years old and a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon when I was 52.
Frank, that reminds me of our first conversation back in Dallas. I think we were probably a couple cocktails in. Maybe we had reached the point of talking about pies and our favorite flavors and uh, the baking chronicles at that point.
I just want to remind you it's coconut cream, okay?
Okay, I do. I love making coconut cream pie. Okay, side note.
Okay.
But we had really gotten deep into conversation, and you told me a story about a moment when you and your wife, because you were doing your graduate degree together, right?
Yes, we were.
You told me kind of about an aha moment. I would love for you to share with our audience what happened that evening.
So we were working on master's degrees, and we were both in a program where we had earned fellowships, and it was a master's degree in public policy. But something came up in the class we were in, and there were a fair number of educators in the room, and they were talking about something called a rubric, and I didn't know what that was. And like any man, we don't like to stop and ask directions. I was not going to ask a question in front of all these educators that they all knew, and I didn't. I go, I'll catch up on the ride home. So as we were crossing the street to the parking lot, we were waiting for the light to change, and I said, "Hey, what was the thing that you guys were talking about? A rubric or Rubik's cube or I don't have any
You.
I had no idea what it was, you know." And she started laughing. "It's not a Rubik's cube; it's a rubric." And I go, "Well, you're going to have to tell me what that is." And she said, at the time, she was teaching AP Physics and AP Chemistry, and she said, "So you know uh, Newton's three laws?" And I said, "Yes, for." So she goes, "We don't test using multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blanks. We have to make sure kids can write when they get out of school. So all of my tests are essays. So when I build a rubric and I ask the question of tell me in an essay about Newton's laws, I expect to see those three laws. And then I put a point system to that, say 10 points for that total question, or 3.33 for each one of the laws. And I don't know why it struck me, but at that very moment, I said, "So you know the answer that you have to have?" And she goes, "Oh, absolutely." And I go, "Well, I need to do that in my RFPs. I need to know how do I grade that answer." And the other part of it was is I thought to myself, I'm making this too complex. Why am I asking about how many offices somebody has worldwide when I'm only doing business in North America? Why do I need to know how many people they employ when I'm buying a gadget or service? It's just not important. And so I really started simplifying the kind of things that I did. So I like to use a two-step process where if I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, or I believe there's something better or a better way out there, I'll use a request for information, and I'll ask some of that boilerplate information. I'll look at their financials and make sure that if I want to buy $10 million worth of stuff, I'm not buying it from a $500,000 company. You got to make sure that they can do it. And so I do that stuff in the preliminary part, and then I move to the final thing, either uh, particularly if it's something where there's a proposal is required, and I want to understand how they're going to do it, an implementation plan, a timeline, integration of software, whatever it might be. I wait. And so really it's more of a funnel effect. I use the RFI to pre-qualify and reduce the number of people down to those that, hey, I think they can do business, can give me what I want, and I can get what I need. And then they get the opportunity to do a final proposal. But that rubric thing, and recently I did a presentation on this. We have a thing, it's kind of a virtual network called the Pittsburgh Procurement Network. And it's just a loose confederation of procurement professionals in Western Pennsylvania mostly. And we teach each other. And I was going through this and I was really surprised. There were a lot of veteran people in the room that came back and goes, I never thought about this. And there were a couple professors in the room, And when I brought up rubric, of course, they knew exactly what I was talking about. And later on, they both said, we don't teach that. We use rubrics all the time for our classrooms, but we're not teaching how to use a rubric for a vendor scorecard. And I've done presentations for Institute of Supply Management and actuarial groups and all different kind of stuff. But I have never gotten so many compliments on the presentation as I did on that one. And it really was back to fundamentals.
Could you see the light bulbs going off in these people's minds, like their face changing, kind of
Yeah.
like what you went through when you had your light bulb moment?
Well, I saw compact fluorescence, I saw incandescence, and I saw LEDs. Okay. So, but yes, yes, absolutely. I actually wrote that presentation when I was angry. This goes back to biting,
Oh,
biting my tongue. I saw a presentation from a very large healthcare provider that came out, and it was an Excel spreadsheet. And they expect you to fill in hundreds of little tiny rectangles. And it's very hard to do a good proposal. It's hard to do a proposal, let alone a good one.
I can't tell you how angry Excel makes me too, to be honest.
Excel may be okay for an RFI or that boilerplate stuff where you're just trying to qualify somebody. But on a proposal, I'm very visual. I'm not a photographic memory, but if I see something in a spreadsheet and I see something in the graphic, I will always remember the graphic. And I think that a lot of people see it that way. So that was also one of my pet peeves when I was doing this. But when something strikes me, I'll just start a presentation. And when I was angry about doing it, like this proposal is absolutely horrible. The reason why I was really upset is the senior director of procurement for this company that's huge is a friend of mine, and we work together.
Oh no.
And I'm going, if he saw this, he would be livid. But I start writing that proposal, and then I'm going, okay, uh, don't make a complaint without giving a solution. So the presentation became the result, my little bit of pet peeve, and became a presentation. And it went over very, very well.
I love that you are taking the time to share your experience and educate the next generation of procurement because there's just not enough.
Even the professors had both approached me and said, we always put some time in for some guest speakers. Would you be willing to talk? And you know, although you learned your lesson about the rubric, we learned some lessons from you too about other things, other content we should be putting into our programs as well. But you're right. Somebody said to me one time, "Well, I learned everything on the job." Well, I kind of did too. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that takes a long time. And I'm disappointed in education. To get a degree in supply chain, it's not much different, at least core curriculum isn't much different than a business degree. And
Wow.
and you know what? It's the same thing for HR. You kind of get the basics of business law, things like that. And then you get what, 6 classes, 7 classes in your specialty. It's just hard to get everything you need.
Well, we're hoping to change that and the messaging of empowering procurement, helping businesses grow, helping people grow within their career. What can up and coming leaders glean from this light bulb moment that you've had?
Everybody's turned on by something slightly different. So I'm not saying that somebody has to do it the way I do it. But the first supervisor I ever had, his name was Tom Fox, and people would follow him anywhere. He was the guy. Now, Tom wasn't a genius. He wasn't analytical. He was a manager. I mean, to this day, he might still be the best guy that I ever worked for. And so when I get into those difficult moments, as a manager and as a director, I always kind of did, hey, what would Tom do? How would Tom have handled that? He had a way with people. You were just sucked in by the personality. But when I think, and one of my recommendations for people getting into the business is get a mentor. I've been lucky enough to have somebody like Tom in the very beginning of my career. to help teach me when to keep that mouth shut because that gets me in trouble. But, it seems like different mentors have come along at different times in my life. I've had two or three people that saw something in me that helped me learn how to be a better manager. When I'm gone from this earth and hopefully somebody saying a nice eulogy about me, they're not going to say, wow, he was a heck of a contracts guy. He really knew his T's and C's. I want them to say that he was a good husband, a good father, and a good friend. That that's my hero. That's my definition. So my advice to younger people, especially when you're first getting out of school, just be observant and find somebody that can help you. Other advice is like take your time. If you rush into something, you say the wrong thing, you don't have support data, you didn't do your homework, and you fail, you might not get another chance. So, ask for help, seek a mentor. And the other thing is don't think that your education stops, and I'm just a perfect example of that.
So, mentorship and education of all kinds, getting additional degrees, finding ways to educate yourself through presentations, research, your networks. That's incredible advice. And I know that through your consulting, you are still educating and you are still helping others rise up. Tell me a little bit about Chorus Consulting and what you do every day.
There's really two parts of my business. One is the consulting side of the business, and I do program evaluations of procurement or supply chain organizations. A lot of those would probably include some level of reorganization. So that's one side of the business, and then the other side of the business, supporting a GPO, much like ONA does. Believe it or not, those two pieces connect relatively well for me because when I go in and I do an evaluation and I see that there's an opportunity, I don't present that opportunity at the time I'm being paid to do a program evaluation or a review or some organizational design or whatever. I usually wait until that is completed and they get what they paid for. And then I'll come back later on. Hey, when I was there, I saw this might be a fit for you. And it pretty much is a fit for almost everybody because there's no fee to join and no minimum purchase. It really is a no brainer. I used it when I was the director of procurement at Ohio State University, and I used it at American Eagle. So I was a user of the service before I began promoting the service.
Well, very good. So the group purchasing part, that's the common thread that we have. And I love part of the conversation that I love that we had the first time we met was that you have such a deep background in procurement, managing procurement for large organizations. And somehow you have overcome what I think is a common misconception in the industry about GPOs. You see the value, and even in larger organizations, you've been able to use those contracts. So that was pretty cool to learn. Part of why we're here, as a brand, Una as a brand, and speaking out. Obviously, we want to empower procurement, but part of that is allowing room for group purchasing and relationships with GPOs into the procurement strategy.
It's interesting. When I first went to Ohio State, I was not really well informed about group purchasing organizations. And I saw that they were using different acronyms and they were all GPOs. You have to tell me what all that means and why are you doing that? And so there was no way with the number of requests, the huge volume of requests. My department was 37 people, and it was just a treadmill. It's a treadmill every day trying to keep up with that volume. But so they start using the GPOs to push business to because they already had negotiated pricing. So I saw that. I saw how that was working. Then later on at American Eagle Outfitters, I was building a group and I only had a couple people when I first started. But the thing that was interesting is at that very time we were going through putting Ariba in place. And I had this short period of time to get Ariba up and running. I don't want to say across the globe, but certainly in the US. I started to think about maybe this can work. So I connected with the right person, and we kind of went through. So we start consolidating all of that. I was able to get Ariba up and running in about 90 days, which is as good as anybody's ever done. My own group had come back. Why are you letting us source that? Why aren't you letting us source that? And you have to look at when is it worth your time? Because they could take 3 months to source something, and I lost 3 months. It wasn't worth it, and I didn't have spend analytics. So I said, no, we're putting this stuff in the way it is, get it up and running, and then we'll review that in 6 months or a year. Now I have my spend analytics. I better know what I have. Should I bid it out? Actually, no. None of it made any sense. So to me, it's a complete no brainer. They understood why I did that and the efficiency that was created because none of them have the number of people in their organization that they would want. And especially with what's going on with the coronavirus, I don't think anybody's going to be hiring for a while. So this is a simple way to save some money quickly. And it goes back to that primary item that we're all judged upon as procurement professionals. How much are you saving me? There's the answer.
Right. Speed to savings is important. The actual savings itself is essential, but the time portion and the efficiency that you're able to achieve, that's the key. And then you can move on to the next, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's been so interesting hearing about your consulting and your background and your education, those light bulb moments that have clearly impacted you, the way that you work, and now others that hear your presentations. I would like to say, I just want to check with you. The presentation that you're referencing about the rubric, can people find that on your LinkedIn page?
Yes, and LinkedIn is probably the best way if somebody feels that they would like to contact me.
Great. I will make sure to link that on our page here for this episode. And Frank, I just want to thank you again. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and getting to connect again since the first couple times we've met.
Yep, I love it. I love it. It's been a very good thing I think for both of us. And hopefully we continue to talk and think about new ways to do business.
Absolutely. Well, cheers to you, Frank, and continued success with Chorus Consulting.
All right, thank you so much, Catherine.